Hello, Paul. How are things out your way?
Oh, they're hopping. They're hopping. We we did lunch, well, did supper this evening with one of Sue's schoolmates or teacher mates with Van Buren ISD. They're all retired. And we got back about half an hour ago, and I was putzing here on the computer, and she said, well, you should get to your meeting. And I said, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So I'm here.
Oh, great. And I just heard from Al Wahmhoff. He wanted to know, he wanted the URL sent to him again, so I'm confident that he'll be logging in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, while I have you there, explain to me how you got involved in the Braille machine repair.
Sue Sue went back to graduate school at Western shortly after she got her bachelor's degree. Got a master's in geographic or geography education, but no, she got a fellowship for that. And but the reason reason she went back to grad school was to get trained to teach support blind children in the school systems. And so professionally, she was a teacher consultant for the visually impaired. That was her whole career. And it wasn't until 2004 that she brought that I recall her bringing home a Brailler to see if I could fix it, and I did, and I have been involved with some parts of the Braille community remotely here in Kalamazoo, and bicycled with a blind counselor for the state in the blind support programs that the state runs. There's a training center in Kalamazoo, and she was based at the training center. And she had told me early in 2004, 2003 that the old gentleman up towards Lansing who had been doing the Braille repairs for the state here in Michigan had passed away. And she didn't really hint that I should take over for him, but Sue said, if you wanted to, you probably could be as busy as you'd want if you took over some of that work. And thinking in terms of 2 or 3, 4 Braillers a month, something like that. And I set up a DBA to do it formally. And I got to the point I was doing 50 or 60 a year, and and eventually I got to the point that I was buying used Braillers on eBay, refurbishing them, and then selling them as used Braillers. And that morphed into an affiliation with an outfit in Vancouver called the Braille Superstore. And as that progressed, they were selling Braillers on their site, refurbished Braillers, which I was supplying to them. So, I've had Braillers on every continent except Antarctica. One in Hong Kong counts for Asia, so it's of that fashion. And all over the U.S. It's a great community to be involved in, and it's been a lot of fun. I managed to talk my brother into taking over the work a couple of years ago. So now he's doing it, and I'm out of it. It was time. I'm already too busy. So.
Well, that's interesting. I see that Al and Frank have joined us, and if you haven't figured it out, I had earlier asked Paul how he got involved in the Braille machine repair business, and so that was kind of an interesting venture right there. So, how are things with you two guys, Al and Frank?
Go ahead, Frank.
I'm okay. I'm still experiencing. I'm still going through this this lung disease. Things have gotten fairly bad, primarily because I'm reacting poorly to the medication I'm taking. It's destroyed my appetite, so much so that I don't like food anymore, which is bad because I'm losing weight. I guess I have the weight to lose. I was overweight, so there's an upside to that. But they took me off prednisone, which made me very hungry. That's one of the side effects of prednisone. That and insomnia. I didn't know that, but I had a hard time sleeping under prednisone. I'm doing better now since I've gotten off prednisone. So I'm taking a drug now. It's called mycophenolate. And what they finally explained to me, I don't know why I didn't ask this question earlier, was the prednisone suppresses your immune system right away. But the other drugs that suppress the immune system that aren't steroids take 3 months to kick in of taking it. So that's the deal. I was on prednisone for 3 months and this other drug, mycophenolate, for 3 months. And now I'm just on mycophenolate. And when I'm just on mycophenolate, I have no appetite. I have learned I have to eat, of course. Soft food is fine. Bread and some foods I gag on. I just can't swallow it. I can't chew it long enough, and I end up spitting it out. So I'm in that limbo of trying to figure out the right drug to help me suppress. But I'm not quite as out of breath as I was at the beginning of this. In February, I was much more out of breath. So there is hope that there's some improvement happening. I'm taking a CT scan in mid-August, taking a breath test in mid-August, and I'm seeing my pulmonologist shortly thereafter. So she's thinking of changing medications on me. She said there's 3 drugs for my disease that have more or less equal effect. And so since I'm really reacting poorly to mycophenolate, maybe she'll try another drug. But I'm up and around. I'm alive. I'm doing light work. I'm not doing anything heavy because it causes me to be out of breath. We're having a round of company up at our place in northern Wisconsin this coming week. We're having 4 guests. So we're looking forward to that. That's all the news from the Marfia side. I'll pass it on to Paul. Or Albert, I'm sorry.
I also was on prednisone for a while, and I'll second that thing about insomnia.
Yeah.
I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and there was no more sleeping involved.
Yeah, they couldn't get back to sleep. I agree.
Not at all. And that was, they put me on that because I had that hearing loss from the deer car accident, and I thought maybe that'd help bring back my hearing. Well, it hasn't done much for hearing, and I'm done, and I'm thankfully off of prednisone. And I have 3 months of hopefully you'll get some of your hearing back, but no medication right now. And
Okay.
I have a little bit more of my left hearing than I had before. At least the test showed that. I don't know. Maybe I pushed the button more often or something. Who knows on those tests, whether you're really hearing it or not, or how accurate they are. But we'll see. And the right ear has been better since the beginning. I mean, not real good, but as we get older, I guess we lose some hearing anyway. So who knows? I didn't have a baseline there to go against. The only baseline they have is when they first tested me right after I had the car accident there.
Did you get your car replaced, Albert?
Yes, we did. That
You
was
got a new car?
the interesting thing is we have a car that looks exactly the same on the outside. It's 2.5 years newer, 25,000 miles less on it, and the settlement through AAA was relatively good. That they gave us a $2,000 extra bonus on it for being in such good shape. The old one that got hit, it wasn't in too good a shape when I looked at it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It was. They knew it was in great shape before it got hit. So, of course, Donna thinks I should have stopped. I know the deer was too close. There was no stopping. It traveled probably 6 inches from the time I saw it, and it hit the car. So it was right there. The car stopped itself, and the automatic systems notified the authorities, and they asked.
All your airbags, most of them get.
All of them
Just,
deployed. Yes, every
all
one
of
of
them.
them.
All of them. Okay.
And then deflated immediately after that. So it was like, what happened is what my wife's Donna's comment was. What happened? Because she had been putting her cell phone away at the time and didn't know what had happened. And there was no impact to us in the car other than the airbags and immediate deflation. So, and then her door wouldn't open because the deer had hit just a little bit to her side of the front center.
The front end. Okay.
So yes, we have a brand new car, less than 2,000 miles on it now. And they said maybe 6 to 8 weeks to get the one. We spoke for one that was in transit all the way from Lafayette, Indiana, of course, which isn't very far from
No.
here. And we spoke for it, put some money down on it, and it came in within 4 to 6 weeks that we spoke for it. So
Is most of your house remodeling done, Albert?
We've had a painter, the same painter, the last 12 months, and he was supposed to get done last week, and he came last week on Thursday for 2 days, and then 2 weeks ago for 2 days, and 3 days last week, and then he has a contract at some apartment buildings that he had to go back on for. He thought just Thursday and Friday last week and was going to come back with us today, but now he says tomorrow, so we'll see. He's still got all the trim around the windows, so we currently have plastic on all our windows. It's like we don't need any shades. You can't see out. So help, please paint around the windows and get us out of here.
Okay, I see Norb Bufka is sort of signed in, and Dick Galant is coming on board. Norb, so that you know, so far we've got Paul Banner, Al Wahmhoff, Frank Marfia, Bill Gebhard, Dick Galant, and you. So we're just kind of chatting away on what's going on in our worlds.
Yeah, I'm not going to stay on very long actually, but I did want to get on and say hello anyway.
Yeah.
And actually, I have an agenda item. I should have emailed you, but can I say that now?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Remember a couple of years ago, we decided to create a fund so we could have a plaque put in the old seminary building. I bring it up because I'd like to finish that commitment, get to the $5,000 and get that plaque up there. So I'm hoping that we can start a campaign at some point. I mean, talk about it and devise something, come up with some idea or whatever, and instead of just hit or miss.
Right, right.
What do you think of that?
How much did we raise the first time? Norb, you know, you remember? Or maybe Bill knows?
What?
I think we got somewhere around
500 maybe?
I think it was a little bit more.
Oh, no, it's 5,000.
No, that's what they wanted, but
Oh, right. I'm sorry. What was your question?
How much do
we raised
get?
we raised an amount because I contributed toward it.
Oh, I think it's over a couple thousand.
Yeah, I don't think it was more than 2,000, but
Okay.
I'd have to go back and check with whoever their development director is now to see what the status of that is. Tom Dalton has been in the building, or not recently, but the last, closing in on a year ago. And I don't recall that he mentioned seeing any kind of plaque. Yeah, we'll look into it and see what we can turn up. I guess my thought is after, I'll find out what we've raised, and then we can kind of throw it back into the group and see if anybody wants to or to kick into it.
I get emails from Samaritas. I get emails from Samaritas about every second month, every third month.
Oh yeah, I do too.
I'm on their mailing list, and so
Right.
Yeah, what I understood is we had to raise $5,000 for them to put a plaque up.
Yeah, that's what I kind of remember too.
Okay.
But after their development director that I was dealing with left, it was just sort of left in the open.
Okay.
I didn't have anybody to be in contact with on any basis at all. So I'll poke around and see if I can get any answers in there, and then we can decide what to what their next step ought to be.
That would be great. And I'm ready to contribute some more, donate some more.
Bill, who
Yeah.
holds the money? Who's holding the money?
Oh, it
I
went
think-
directly to Samaritas.
Okay.
yeah, I think it got spent already. It's probably.
No, it was a reserved fund.
Oh, was it reserved? You think?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah. I remember a conversation with the development director. I don't remember his name, but I remember they were saying that it was reserved. But that's the other reason I brought it up. Let's make sure it is reserved.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually assumed that it had already been gone into that year's budget.
The what?
That it had been contributed. Our contributions went toward whatever their funding, their budget was for that year. And so.
No, I don't, no.
You don't think so, huh? Okay.
No, I'm pretty sure, I'd be willing to bet, well, it's never smart to be positive, but that my memory is that it was reserved. It was a fund specifically for this purpose. So I don't think they could morally change that and just spend it.
Right. Yeah, that was my understanding too. And back to my background in fundraising, gotta use it for the purpose that you asked people to donate for. And it just
Right.
may be that we didn't come up with a dollar amount. The interesting thing is I was looking for information about the housing development project that's going on down there, and I stumbled across a article that was in I think Grand Rapids Business Association or Business Weekly or something like that came out right just when the housing project or the Samaritas Affordable Living Project they opened the building, and they mentioned the big donors, and then but they didn't mention. All they said was many other donors as well. So that's about all that I know, and I can
Did any
check.
of us make it? Did any of us make it as the big donors?
I think I know I got the sense that you had to be in like the $50,000 to $100,000 range to get. And I thought that, from my understanding of talking with their development director, was he saw the value in having, recognizing the roots of the seminary, and so he sort of bent the rules and threw out a figure of 5,000 to see if we thought that might work. And I said, well, I'll throw it out to the group and see what what we can do. So that's where things stood as of a couple of years ago. So I'll look into it and see what I can turn up.
Great. Thanks, Bill.
Anything more, Norb, while I got you online, did you get that, oh, now I lost the track of the Synod project. Did you ever get that report prepared, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, it was hand delivered to the Vatican. I knew somebody who was going to the Vatican to deliver other report, and I asked her to take ours. And so she hand delivered it to the Vatican office. Yeah, somewhere around late June. Yeah, I forgot about your question, and I didn't ask the group if it was okay to pass it along to you. So I will do that and get back to you.
Oh, okay, great.
I don't know why they wouldn't. I don't know why they would object, because it's. I'd be happy to share it, but I just want to make sure that
Sure.
the group. Yeah. Okay.
Down to Dick Galant land. How are things in Ann Arbor?
Well, they're fine. I will say that about 2 weeks ago, my brother Dan passed away. He had cardiac arrest.
Oh my gosh.
And,
Shame.
Al, I'm not sure. Maybe you knew him, but he after I left, he was at St. Joe's for 4 years. And then he went on to Michigan State, the James Madison College, and he got a law degree at the University of Detroit. And he actually, if you might remember him, Jim Masuga was there at that time at the U of D as an admissions counselor. But anyways, he clerked for the 6th District Court of Appeals, but he spent the majority of his time at General Motors as a labor and benefits attorney, and retired. And he died of cardiac arrest. His wife has severe Alzheimer's, and I think that might have been kind of his doing in. He's buried. It's kind of interesting in a way. You might. He's buried at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Detroit. It's actually in Southfield. And the interesting thing is that where he is buried is about, I don't know, maybe about, I don't know, 100 yards, not a yards, but about 100, 200 feet from a chapel that is the chapel of Frank Nevin, who was the original owner of the Detroit Tigers.
Oh,
It has, the chapel is decent size. It's like the size of a garage with tigers around it, stone tigers. And at the other side, interestingly, and this is pure happenstance, our aunt, who was a Mercy nun, and she died in 2003, and somehow befriended Sparky Anderson. And anyways, because Sparky called when she had passed, but she lived to be 90 years old, and she's buried even closer to that chapel. Now, maybe you know, but Danny, like me, are just baseball nuts. So the good Lord's looking out for him, I think. But it was really amazing that the two, you know, our family, who are both from Grand Rapids, obviously, came to rest in those two places. They're so close. So it was.
But Dick, it's kind of interesting that with this news, because I got an email from somebody that I thought it was your brother that said unsubscribed from our list, and the reason given was no longer interested. So this was just in the last couple of days that I got it. So maybe somebody was going through his email and saw that.
That might have been the reason. I can't answer that. So.
Okay, yeah.
Well, anyways, he's passed. So,
yeah, okay.
I want to change the subject a little bit, but if it's all right, I'm going to kind of go for a little bit and bear with me. But Paul, I think you can identify with what I'm going to say. I'm going to talk about the seminary in Baltimore. Can you allow me to go a little bit? I want to share
Go
something. The Baltimore Seminary was built in 1795. It was closed in 1972. And the interesting thing is it was a compound, and it was all self-contained where you slept and everything. There was a building or like a house right next to it where history was just all over the place, especially Catholic history. Was a house where Mother Seton had lived for a year or so before she entered her ministry. I'm leading up to something, so just bear with me. If you get bored, just raise your hand. I'm not trying. Paul, you can add more to it. But anyways, she lived right next door. I mean, literally, you could touch the building. It was so close. But the building, what I learned later in touring different things in the East Coast and with history, it was no different in the architecture inside than the Freedom Hall in Philadelphia. I was just stunned. I mean, the whole building was, the whole grounds was surrounded by a brick wall, and it was the area, if you're familiar with the series a few years back called The Wire, that happened around there. Now, strategically, it was, maybe a half a mile, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, about a half a mile or so from the Inner Harbor, which is where the national anthem and all that good stuff. Paca Street was, it lines now with Camden Yards baseball, and Babe Ruth's house is right across the street. Now, remember, Babe Ruth was originally from Baltimore. And if you go to where the seminary was, about 3 blocks from the seminary is the basilica. Is I think the oldest basilica in the United States. And Pope John Paul actually visited there. And anyways, it's still viable. It's an interesting place down there. That area is very interesting. About 3 or 4 years ago, I remember walking around there and everything, and it was quite different. And I mean, not quite like Detroit, but it's not the best of areas, unfortunately. The main building has been razed, and there was a chapel. Well, in the main building, this is important in a sense, I think, was a room which they called a prayer hall. And the reason they called it a prayer hall was that the Jansen heresy was prevalent. And so the way we worship, there was a chapel, which is a historical, what do you call it? A historical building. We would only go there for mass. We would, because they had some ruling, and the order, by the way, of the Sulpicians was originally French, or they came from France, and they said all their prayers in this prayer hall. You remember that, Paul? The prayer
I
hall?
don't recall that.
Well, we always prayed in the prayer hall, not in church, when we said our night prayers and all the other things. But the reason was because of that heresy. And the interesting thing is that was the room where the Baltimore Catechism was written.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to bump into some history here.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is the Sulpician priests, actually, they had a little cemetery on the grounds, which held the graves of the Sulpicians that had died, that they were there. Now, the Sulpicians were started apparently in France, in the Church of Saint Sulpice, which is the surplice of Saint Michael, and that is where, to give you a reference, I actually happened, I was lucky, I was in Paris, wasn't long, but I went into that church because I wanted to see it. This is after I was in the seminary. And there was a funeral that was going on for a French soldier. But that's, if you're familiar with the Tom Hanks movie about the monk in what he was looking for, something, the Da Vinci Code or something.
Yeah, Da Vinci Code.
And if you recall that scene where they have that lightning that goes through the church, there's a scene like that, a bolt of lightning. That is the church of there. But I was interested. I went. My wife and I went out, and we were. I wanted to see the area out in the. It's called the Eastern Maryland, and the reason I was going there was I wanted to see Assateague. I don't know if you remember. If you're a little kid, they had these little ponies, and they were on the beach, and they wrote children's books.
Yeah.
But there is a town called St. Mary's City. And the area around there is basically tobacco fields. It runs from Baltimore all the way to the coast, the eastern shore. And the property that I went to this property, and it was granted to the Baltimore from the King of England, who was, now the Baltimore apparently was, I think it was Baltimore Calvert, I can't remember, one of the other names. Paul, if you remember, please correct me, because you're really good at this. But he was Irish, okay? He was a Irish, like a prince or something, I don't know, but he had money. And the English king liked the guy. So what he did is, the way that the English kind of granted property to people is that they created a company, so that they could, like in India, the tea company, where they parceled the land like that, and he gave the land to Baltimore. And in the agreement, interestingly, that they had, is that he would, because of the friction between the English Catholics and the English Anglican Church and the Irish Catholics, they agreed that you could have a freedom of religion. And there's I don't know if you can see it well. I'm sorry. I'm going to put it on here. If you can, hopefully you might be able to see it. This is the church. Now, this church, the property for the Baltimore went right to the harbor. Like in Detroit too, the farmers would have direct access to the riverfront because they take their goods and then the Detroit means the Narrows, and they use that to ship their goods. Well, this is the same thing. The inner harbor came from the ocean into Baltimore. And St. Mary's City is along the way. So as you tour the property, there's still buildings that exist. You can see that by the church. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to see if the chapel that I told you about that was on the property for the seminary, if there was a similarity between the two. And there were different cities, if you go along there and visit it, in this tobacco area, they're all along that shore. And there was history as far as the War of 1812, as far as like one of the cities faked out the British by turning off all their lights so they couldn't blow up their city. But getting back to this property of North Baltimore, they still have some of the barns and things that are, pretty much no roofs or anything. And they're still there. But between the end of the barn and that church is about 100 feet of sidewalk-like or a lane that is, in sense, I'll call it, I don't know if this is the right word, but no man's land. And there's a monument in this church, which, stupid me, I didn't take a picture of, that there is like a cement plaque that says that they're allowed to worship. It gave them freedom to worship, and decreed it because of what the English king had agreed to. And so Maryland is in a celebration of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. That's how it got its name. And that's why kind of the center of Catholicism, and starting in the New World, in our country, was dedicated to Mary, and how the state has its name. The other thing that's interesting, when you look at the geography, and this is a rural area, Harriet Tubman is the woman that was on the freedom trains or underground. That's maybe, I don't know, I'm going to guess about 20 miles from there. This is all like tobacco fields. There's a national monument of hers there. And you can go and see her heroic works of getting the slaves freed. And if you look at this, if you get the trains and everything, and you have these different books that have been written about the what you call Underground Railroad, they go from basically from there to Delaware up into Pennsylvania, and it's close to the ocean area too.
Yeah.
The one thing that's interesting too is that the distance between Washington, D.C. and where these facilities, or I'll call them facilities, are located, is probably less than 100 miles. Now I'm going to do a supposition here and wonder how far how the influence of that church and that kind of ethos they were able to use the Underground Railroad, or did they help them in some way? I cannot answer that. But I just thought that the history that I was privileged to do with Paul. Go ahead. Norb? I thought I heard somebody. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with me. It was just powerful.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Norm.
Were you asking me?
No, I heard your voice, so I was trying to respond.
Oh, no. I'm
Okay.
answering the phone. I should be muted.
Oh. Anyways,
Yeah.
I wanted to share that with you because it was just powerful to me,
Okay.
having lived in there in, been
That's okay.
in the seminary there that for
I was gonna call you.
for almost a year that it was, I don't know, Paul, you may have some insights
I
or
got this.
whatever, but
They
I
thought
just
I
wanted
was
to
saying
share that
something.
with
I
you.
don't know how they could hear me. I thought I was muted.
I'm not familiar with hardly any of that.
Anyway,
Well,
A
actually,
couple
okay.
questions
hold on
though.
a second.
if I can
The,
answer.
Norb, if you can hear us, Norb, can you hear us? You're
Yeah.
not muted. You're not
Okay,
muted.
sorry. I'm gonna leave.
Okay,
Thanks. Bye.
bye.
by Norb.
Text Eagle.
So the
Uh,
building, your seminary closed in 72, Dick?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The
Yep,
building
that's
and
right.
all the structures, were they converted to some other use?
No, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I'll respond to Frank, then I'll get you, Paul. I actually took a couple pictures of it. The chapel still exists. The
Mhm.
house where Mother Seton is still standing, but the main building is has been raised. So it's kind of like a park or an oasis, basically surrounded by projects. It's probably 3 blocks from Howard Street, the main drag in Baltimore. And it's just a park. I have some photos of it, marking the existence of it and everything. And it's kind of like what happened to St. Joe's after it left, so to speak. But because it accrued so much history in the Catholic Church. So, Paul, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have two questions. The chapel that you were talking about that was used as a prayer chapel, is that separate from the chapel that we used for our services and so forth?
No, it wasn't. That's the point. It was the prayer hall in the main building where we always met for prayers, like in the morning at night. It was called a prayer hall.
I don't remember that.
Were you
I
there,
think
Al?
we used different language.
Yeah, I don't remember that
What
either,
did you-
Paul.
Pardon
Yeah.
me?
I think we used different language.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it was a hall. It was not in the church. That's the point.
Okay.
It was outside the church, but it was also the room. It's the same room that I was in, and I can't see it changing. It was where the Baltimore Catechism was, because it was the
Okay.
biggest room in the whole building,
There was a room that
Yeah.
second
There,
floor.
there was a room that Father, forget the name,
Walsh. Walsh.
no,
W-A-A.
no,
No.
the
Fire
rector of the seminary when we were
Oh.
there.
McEwen or something like that.
No, this was the sociologist.
Father Lee.
Lugger Lee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Father Lee.
That he would give us lectures, and maybe it was just once a week. We would have a recreation break late in the afternoon, and then we'd come in, and then he would lecture about virtues, or I don't remember what I really remember about that is because of my alphabetical seating, he
You were in the front.
lectured right at the center. There was an aisle, and he had his lectern,
Yeah.
which was part of the structure. And I sat right next to that, right in front of him. And one of his lectures, I don't remember. I I have no idea, no way to remember what he was talking about.
Oh, come on.
Because-
Oh,
I fell asleep.
Well, did your degree come from that? Was that a university or was that connected,
Yes.
affiliated with a university at Baltimore?
So,
It was a college and university.
It was a
it
college
was-
and
it was-
university?
It was listed like that by that, and it was accredited through what's called the Middle States.
Yeah.
So it was a degree, and you got a degree in Thomistic theology, or no, sorry,
Philosophy, wasn't it
Thomistic
philosophy?
philosophy. I
Philosophy.
stand correct. Yeah. So, Paul, what's your other question?
well, I was wondering that if, Dick, if you remember that room I'm talking about and whether or not that was the prayer room or whether it was.
Could have
something
been. They might have changed it, but I remember we would always. Let me ask you this: where did you say your morning prayers?
I don't remember. I think
Okay.
that we said all of our prayers in the chapel,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
in the Seton Chapel.
Al,
Yes.
do you remember that too?
that's the way I remember it, but I could be wrong.
Okay. That was
I
the
do
chapel
remember
was called Our Lady of Clairvaux. They used to call it Miss Clairol, but I mean, it was probably the same room because it was the largest room of any place in the whole building.
Yeah, I do remember the large hall you're talking about, but I don't
Yeah.
remember it as being a prayer hall.
Okay, well, that's what we call it. Well, he came in and maybe he made some changes because when I was there was a different, he was not the rector.
Uh-huh.
All I remember, he did teach sociology and he always talked to the side of his mouth. And
Yeah, I remember that now.
no, he was a bright guy. He knew what was going on, but it was,
Well, Dick,
You
did you
know,
graduate
for the
from
rest
that?
of you, he was very involved in the planning and development of,
Baltimore City.
what's the city?
Baltimore City.
No, not Baltimore City.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Columbia?
Yeah,
Yep, I know where you're talking. I've
Columbia,
been there
Maryland.
too. Yes, yep, I've been there. Yep, they were just that's kind of like where the home of the Baltimore, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was started there. And I think that Johns Hopkins, I think he was a railroad guy. That's where he got his money. It's just like Stanford, Leland Stanford. He was a railroad guy. He started the university, and the University of Chicago, where Frank went to school, is where Rockefeller put his money in. I mean, so that was kind of I don't know, I'll call that a trendy thing where these rich guys put, these private schools together, and all of them to this day are outstanding universities.
Mhm.
There was a connection, and I think that I would suspect that Father Lee was involved with the accreditation, because that was different than St. Joe's, which had no, its accreditation basically was that certificate you got from Catholic University by taking those tests.
Right.
And if you were transferring to most universities in the United States, it didn't hold any value in a way.
Well, I remember I attended St. Mary's University in San Antonio, and I remember
Okay.
him looking at my transcript from whatever we took in at St. Joe's and at what was the college we took classes at?
Aquinas?
Aquinas. And he gave me credit for everything. I mean, he was very generous in transferring all these credits. I ended up with about 150 credits, and I only needed 120 to graduate.
Yep.
Because he gave me credit for everything. Everything I took in the minor seminary, those freshman and the sophomore year of college, and then the classes I took at Aquinas, the registrar, whatever this title was, when he came
He
around.
was the missions of a registrar. That's correct.
Yeah,
You were lucky, because when
I guess I was lucky.
Well, it was good in a way. That's become a greater issue in today's world. But when I transferred to the University of Michigan, they took mine, but it was the reputation of St. Joe's as an academic institution.
Yeah.
I kind of feel prideful in the fact that I felt that that school that all of us were, privileged to go to or blessed to go to was probably one of the best in the state of Michigan. I mean, where else could you leave with 4 years of English and in what, 3, 5, 7 years of language study in 3 languages? And then plus the other, things you have. I don't think there are many people that, after high school had that much preparation for anything.
On that same topic, when I left after 1 year at Baltimore and got into Grand Valley, so I was in, my class might have been the 5th graduating class. It was about that from Grand Valley. When I started at Grand Valley, they offered what, I don't remember the exact terminology, but they put all of my credits on hold and looked at the first term to see what kind of results I got from the first term. And, being me, it was a 4-point. And I went in 1 quarter or 1 term, I went from a freshman to a senior.
Dick, you went straight to Detroit, right? For your next 2 years after leaving St.
No, I
Joe?
went to Ann Arbor.
No, I'm Dick, or Bill, I'm sorry, Bill Gebhard. Where did you go to school? Was it Detroit?
Yes, Sacred Heart in Detroit.
Sacred Heart, okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, you went to Sacred Heart.
Straight from St. Joe's, right? Because you were in the Lansing diocese or the,
Yeah, that's where Lansing sent everybody at that time.
okay.
It's funny that you mentioned that whole credit process. I have a minor in Greek and Latin that
I do
was
too.
awarded by Wayne State University in recognition of the credits from the seminary. And well, it had to have been the seminary because what we took at Aquinas was music appreciation and
Physics.
Physics, right.
Physics.
Right,
Physics.
right. So I'm probably the only guy in the class of Wayne State in 1968 that has a minor or any kind of academic achievement in Greek and Latin together.
That I didn't get a minor or a major, but the interesting thing is that since I went to St. Thomas grade school, and which is basically almost abuts Aquinas College, we would get the nuns, we would get the young nuns that were students of Sister Kennedy or something, who was the music nun there and teaching, and they would teach that what they did, since they, through their training and everything, preparation, they taught us music. So we throughout the entire time, 8 years or so I was there, we were always, in a good way, were taught music from the nuns that were, that were responsible for teaching us at St. Thomas. I chuckle at that. And it was kind of goofy because it was, I went from the seminary in Baltimore to Michigan, and to show you how naive I was in the orientation session. They had orientation sessions. Maybe you've had them too when you went to the schools. And I got to, I had to, and I sat down with with like well, was basically the chairman of the Latin department at that time in classics at Michigan. And so he asked me what I wanted to major in. And I thought, well, you know, they have a distribution requirement and things like that. Well, for all the number of classes I took in Latin, I said Latin. And so I eventually got a degree in Latin. And then I got a teaching certificate to teach Latin. So I did my student teaching at Belleville High School and taught Latin. And then I got a job, I don't know, a couple of years later, and I taught a half a year at St. Agnes. No, wait, is that right? St. Agnes and Southfield in Detroit. No, Agatha's. I'm sorry, St. Agatha's in Detroit. And then I haven't done any Latin since as far as that, but it got me, I become, as I've gone older and everything, really involved in just understanding Greek and especially Greek and Latin and how much I kind of, it taught me a lot more of understanding about the world and also philosophy that they taught us at St. Mary's. It was kind of weird because when going through it, it's just kind of like in a fog. You know, you had to memorize all this stuff, but then all the hours, all of you like me, spent learning how to parse sentences and declensions and all that began to make a lot more sense in logic and things, so to speak. So, say again?
I do real well on Jeopardy
Yeah.
as a result of my seminary upbringing and the classics, especially dealing with the language issue. I mean, a lot of clues revolve around words that we were familiar with.
That's that. Well, you know, Alex Trebek was in the seminary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Canada. He's a Canadian. He was a Canadian, and he was in the seminary. So,
And while we're still on the old seminary, I just thought I would bring you up to date on what's going on with that housing development back in the what was during our stay was the athletic field. Now you remember how Samaritas took over the main building and turned that into housing, and then they took over the gym and turned that into administrative and I think family counseling services. And Bethany Christian took over St. Henry's Hall and used it for their youth services. And I think it was now about a year ago when they announced that there would be this joint project between, it was not really clear to me who the other partners were in it, but Bethany was one of the partners. And whoever took over the management of maybe it was the construction company, Pinnacle Construction was one of the partners in this housing development. Anyway, that's been on the burners for now for quite a bit of time. And when they announced the project, I want to say sometime back in the fall, people in the Garfield Park neighborhood were kind of upset with the idea that they were going to put so many houses on such a small piece of property. I think their plan was 53 houses or something like that.
Yeah.
It was either 53 or 42 or something. I think it was 42. Yeah, 42 houses.
How much acreage? Maybe 8 acres?
It'd be pretty condensed.
Yeah, right.
Concentrated.
Right. Well, I've been trying to locate somebody who could bring me up to date, and I found on the it's called the 2080 Union Street Project or something along those lines. That's the street address for
Samaritas, right?
Samaritas's family counseling thing. So anyway, trying to get in touch with people over there turned out to be a lot more difficult than I thought. I called, it's called the Grand Rapids Dwelling Project or something along those lines. Does that ring a bell with, I don't have the paper right here in front of me. But anyway, I called up and said, I'm from the Alumni Association. Could I talk to somebody who knows anything about what's going on back there? And the receptionist didn't really have a foggiest idea what I was referring to. And she kept on talking about another project that their similar partners are working on, housing in Grand Rapids. So I went online and I found a plan that the developers resubmitted to the Grand Rapids Planning Commission to answer a lot of the questions related to the size of the houses that they were going to put in and the configuration of the property. And it was really quite an interesting piece. And down at the bottom, the very last page had a timetable that said it looks like construction on the infrastructure is supposed to be starting in the fall. Probably, I thought it said September, somewhere around in there. And then construction of the homes will start in October, and it looks like they will open sometime in 2023 on a gradual basis, with the idea that the whole project will be completed by 2024. I printed out a timeline here, and I can't find the thing sitting on my desktop here. But and I thought what I would do is the next update that I do, I'll include some of the drawings and a link to the Planning Commission document, because it is really kind of impressive to see what they have in mind now. And again, a lot of it is in response to the concerns of residents of the neighborhood. I sent a message to Paul Greenwald, who is in one of the classes after us. I think he was in the 70s somewhere, and I think he's on the Planning Commission. And I didn't hear anything back from him. I sent a message over to Tom, just drew a blank on his name. Lives right there on the property. Tom.
Dalton? No.
Yeah, well, anyway, he said he hasn't heard from anybody and hasn't seen anything. Anyway, what I thought I would do would be to kind of post a quick update of what's going on in that property. But it's really kind of interesting to look at what they have in mind. They answered a lot of questions about the issue of how you were going to have access to the property. That was the big one was they only had one entrance off of I think it's called Mitchell Street behind the property. And the one on Union Street, to 42 houses on that property, and the original plan only called for 2 ways in. But they did a really good job of coming up with what looks like the final project. And I get these emails from it's called Dwelling Place or something along those lines. It's a conservancy of property that they come in and take over big tracts of land and redo the property, bring it up to mostly into housing issues. It's really kind of interesting to see how the property there is taking shape, and it's, for those of us who grew up in that, it's hard to visualize what that's going to actually look like, but it looks like it's going to be really interesting and really fun, exciting piece of or use of the property now that Bethany has taken over St. Henry's, and they have taken over the convent too for administrative purposes. And I don't know if you remember, they were building putting up a building joining St. Henry's and the convent, so they have more office space and classroom space. So that's what's taking place up there in that corner of the property. And then everything, yeah.
Oh, I was wondering, getting to the buildings. I don't know if there was a law or something, that cities, in order to get money or something, were supposed to build housing, make housing available. I don't know if it's for low-income housing or whatever, because I know in Ann Arbor, I think they have something. I can't say where. But my question to you, and based on what you said, is this kind of the response in Grand Rapids for what is that? The south end of Grand Rapids? I mean, Grand Rapids is a pretty big city, but that's where this comes about, of why they're doing, designating that. And who owns the property? I mean, does Samaritas own that property and it's giving it to the city, or does the city own it? I don't know what was transpired, but I'm just asking a question regarding that, and why that, I'll use the word settlement, might be arising as a result of that.
Yeah, I don't understand the whole, that was one question I had way back when this project was announced, that who actually owns the rest of that property. And it doesn't seem to me that Samaritas owns the property itself, except for the buildings that, the main building and the old gym.
Well, yeah, but somebody's got to pay taxes on it.
Right.
Now, the other thing is that when St. Joe's was on there, there's a lot of property there, and there was no tax money coming off of that, right?
I think it was a 40-acre parcel. That was my guess. The whole square might have been as much.
Whatever it was, but it was. But my point is that when they're doing this, the city's got to look at, because look at the value. I don't know. I haven't been there for so long, but the value of those houses around it on Union Street and those are pretty nice homes. And Garfield area was considered a nice area. It kind of abutted eventually East Grand Rapids and stuff. So the point is, there's, it was potentially a lot of tax money that came out of it available. Now, Samaritas, probably, I don't know, does that pay money? I mean, because it's a religious school, and the Christian probably does not either. So, the other part, maybe they made a trade-off with the city on that.
I think Samaritas got funding from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, as I recall what I read. So a lot of the construction was financed by the state of Michigan through that Housing Development Authority. And I know that they got money, or they didn't get money. They got the historic preservation for the
Right.
main building.
They get a break on that.
Right. Yeah. That made them eligible for other credits. That was where I was heading. But I guess I'd have to find out, who actually owns the property, and maybe Paul Greenwald knows more about the organizational side of things. Those are basic questions that I had too, and the people that I've been talking to aren't at that level where they don't really know more than the details of the building itself.
I have a question. Is there any interest in another attempt to have a Grand Rapids, not retreat, reunion, say in October, November, and tour Samaritas and that area around the old seminary? And what was the place we were going to meet at? Someplace near the cathedral?
That was one of the sites. The other one was Garfield Park up the.
Right, that was an outdoor event. We were
Right,
gonna do.
right. We
A picnic
sort of
kind of thing.
scrapped that one because of a lot of
The
issues.
likelihood of bad weather, or we didn't know if there could be bad weather or when
Right.
we were going to do it.
If you would like my input, I think I would like to see the property. However, if you were, from my view, what happened at Kalamazoo, I think, was to me a nice success and
Yeah.
drew 19 or 20 people
Yeah,
based on distances and timing and stuff. That's just my reaction. So I appreciated all the work that people did. The
it wasn't much
problem
work,
was-
really.
Well, it
Frank
worked.
Unger and I don't know who else.
Paul did, didn't he?
Paul, were you involved in
Val?
that gathering in Kalamazoo?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I took names.
Yeah,
No, I mean, that worked out really well.
it did.
And strategically, I'm talking, as far as distance wise, it went pretty good. I mean, it takes me about 2 hours to get to Kalamazoo from Ann Arbor.
And it takes me about 2 hours
I'm
from
just giving you
Chicago.
my reaction. And I was, you got people from Grand Rapids. The problem, I think, in Grand Rapids, I mean, I would probably go if I, if everything worked out availability wise, but not having somebody there, I mean, we have Tom maybe, but that is kind of familiar with all the, the ins and outs of Grand Rapids, I think makes it a lot more difficult for all of us. Personally, that's just my reaction. I'm not against it, but it's a greater
Actually,
challenge.
I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just wondering if
Well, I'm just reacting.
there's enough interest to go see the old seminary building and
Oh, I remember that.
what was the
Well, you got
what was the stuff that we
Baltimore,
were going
all
to go in the some record play keeping place in the near the cathedral, in the cathedral? We were
The
gonna go-
archives.
Archives, that's what it was.
Right. Yeah.
They have to keep our grades, I think. That's a law. Now, if Al and Paul and I wanted to go to Baltimore, we'd see nothing because it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, we were offered a free brick, but I didn't take them up on that.
Yeah.
Really? They offered you a brick when they tore
Yep.
the building down?
Yes, they
Oh, they
did.
did? Oh, I didn't get that privilege. That brick probably was built in about 1812 or something like that. So,
Well, the
But,
other part about that seminary, how it got its beginning, was that the priests, the Sulpicians, came over to the United States. They that was the site of the 1 Mile Tavern on the stagecoach out of town. They were
I didn't know that.
they enjoyed the hospitality there and sipped a few and stayed there and made it a seminary.
Uh-huh.
Made it a whole mile.
Yep, 1 Mile Tavern, either the first or last stop before you got into downtown Baltimore, depending on which way you were going. But that was
It's
a long,
like Novi, Michigan, right?
pardon?
The fifth. It's like Novi, Michigan. It was the fifth
Yeah.
stagecoach
Five.
stop. And going
Right,
to, Galant.
5 miles. Novi stands for 5 miles, right? Or 6, and number 6, Novi.
Yeah.
Just
Number
quick-
and then number 6. Yeah.
Yeah, number 6.
a quick note. Last October, my wife and her sister and I drove over to I think it's called Walkerville. Does that sound familiar right near Grand Rapids?
It's south,
Walker, just
Walker,
Walker.
south suburb,
So
It's the home
northwest,
of Myers.
northwest
Myers
suburb? Oh,
58.
northwest suburb, you're right.
Walker
Yeah,
is the
it's
north.
a-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
it's
guess it
Walker.
wasn't Walker. It was anyway, the point is, we had to go over there she was picking up a rescue dog.
Okay.
My sister-in-law. And so we went over the day before, and so we arrived on a late Friday afternoon, and we drove over to the seminary grounds, and it was cold and rainy. But I got out and I got a few pictures, and while I was out there, somebody came out and was heading. It was like literally the end of the day, end of work. And somebody said, "Well, if you want to go inside, go ahead, and they'd be more than happy to see you." And but anyway, that was, they were very friendly and very welcoming. I don't know if it was just me as an individual. I was able to take some photos, and I took a little video that out in front. But I think they would welcome some. I don't know how they would deal with a larger group. It's hard to say. And I'm not really sure what the chapel is now, like a community room.
Right.
But I haven't talked to anybody over there about whether that would be a conducive to have a group assembly of anybody that was able to get over there. My hunch is that it gets back to food. I don't think the old seminary main building would be conducive to we'd run into those same problems of having to get a caterer to come in and feed us in somebody else's house. So getting back to having something at some other location, maybe it would be more feasible to do that. And whether we did it at the diocesan center there and just forgot about, I think the issue was alcohol. We had to use one of the vendors that was on their approved list, and
Right.
the vendor had there was some issue with the cost of the license, blah blah blah, and that's when things kind of fell through. But getting back to another location, we picked that because it was during the school year would have been on, and as opposed to using, I forget, was it St. Peter and Paul Church that we used, or for the 2018 get together?
Right. Yes. The Lithuanian church.
It was a Saturday, and so we were able to use their facilities for a get together.
Dennis got us all that stuff. That was a slam. That was gracious.
Right. And
when Dennis died, the local TV channel WOD showed his funeral on TV. That's incredible.
I made a copy of that video, and I think it's on. I have it online, or I should put it online as well. But the other one, I think it's Father Phil Slowinski. Does that ring a bell? He was there. Whoever it was in our class for a couple of years. And then he left and then rejoined, not us, but after we left, he came back into the seminary and was ordained. I want to say Philip Slowinski or something like that. He is assistant archivist at the diocese now, and I think that's his parish where we had the last get together. So I mean, we have an entree in there. And apparently there's, we didn't explore it further at that time just because of the timing of the school year starting, and we, if we did it again in the next year, having to do it in the summertime would certainly be a big, we wouldn't have to deal as much as issues related to food and stuff like that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that gives us a long time frame to think about 2023.
It's coming up quick. Holy moly.
We're not getting
on
any younger either. That's the other
Right.
side of the coin. And
I
so
forget
people's health may prevent them from coming.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what did it in for, was the final straw with that planning for
The
that
pandemic.
get together. The next wave of COVID started
Yeah.
striking, and we just kind of decided it wasn't so. People just weren't going to go. I forget, in that whole process, somebody reminded me. We were talking about trying to locate faculty members and get them to come, like Norb did in 2018. There were some, and somebody reminded me that these faculty members, those who are still alive,
They're
are in their
90s.
mid 80s,
No,
the mid to upper 80s. So,
More than that.
so
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I guess we can kind of throw it out and just see if anybody is interested. I personally would like to get together. It was fun doing that in Kalamazoo, but I was only able to go because Stash offered to drive, and so I don't really do a whole lot of getting around much anymore. My wife and I share driving, and if we were to do it in Grand Rapids, it would be for us, the two of us would be a 2-day, overnight kind of a thing.
I could
Right.
pick you up in Brighton.
Yeah,
You can
that
park
would be
your
it.
car, and I can pick you up in Brighton and take you.
Yeah, that's another
That wouldn't be a
alternative.
problem.
Right.
I mean,
So-
you have to go about 30 miles or so, and there's a place you can park your car right off.
Right.
Well, I seem to recall Pete Garthy offered to put me up anyway, if we had it in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
I declined. I've got family all over Grand Rapids, so I've got multiple places to stay at no charge.
So if somebody were going to if it were going to be just a 1-day event, somebody else like Dick would have to give us a ride up and back. That's all I'm saying. For me to do that, even though my family lives in Muskegon, trying to do where I live in West Bloomfield over to Grand Rapids and back in a single day.
That's a
is not-
long haul. That's about 300 miles. at
Yeah,
least.
really, it is. It's about
Oh,
180
300.
over to Muskegon. And
Mhm.
when we do her family reunion up in the Manistee area, it's at least a 2-day affair for us to.
Yeah.
Well, even the gathering we had in St. Joe, Michigan, did we have 8 people, Albert?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we had
Yep.
eight of us attend that one, but the Kalamazoo was more centrally located. And we had 18,
18
Yeah,
or
please.
19.
19 came?
18, I think.
You took the names.
Yeah.
I would do that again.
I had 18
Kalamazoo
names. I had
is
18
reasonable.
names. One no show and one showed that wasn't on the list.
Right, yeah.
18. But before I forget, I still have that open invitation for those that can make it on August 18th at my house here in New Buffalo. And I know at least 4 of you fellows.
Are you still planning that, Albert? That's still on?
Yes, that's still on as
Okay.
far as I know. No one said they weren't coming, but
I still plan to come.
and then there was Paul. Were you coming with your wife
Um,
on Thursday,
We-
the 18th?
We have it on our calendar. We don't know exactly what's developing here. I've had some angina periodic and did a stress test Friday morning.
Uh-huh.
I meet with the cardiologist Wednesday morning to see what's happening. And, it's have no idea what the stress test shows.
Well, you can email me either way. And Bill, were you coming with or without your wife, Bill Gebhard?
Well, I'm a widower, so that eliminates one half of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's
No,
right. I forgot. Were you coming?
No, I won't be able to make it. I've got another commitment with a foundation that evening, and so
Okay.
I can't make that. I
Was
wish
Pete
I
gonna
could.
come? Pete Garthy gonna come, Albert?
I haven't heard back from Pete yet, but I was going to send out another email and see if you get
Okay.
any fish. And
And one time,
Bill, Mhm.
oh, okay, because you're pretty close to Grand Rapids, aren't you? Only about an hour and a half drive from Grand Rapids,
yeah, right.
depending what side of the city they live on, person lives on.
So
Did
I'll
they finish
send out.
construction on 94?
Oh no, never.
Never.
One section or another.
Just don't go through Jackson, between Jackson and Kalamazoo. It's
Oh,
always
that.
a challenge.
Yeah, those two are forever.
Yeah. I don't think I can make it, Al. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure.
Understood.
Appreciate the invitation.
So it's open to anyone that wants to come, and just let me know. And I'll send out that kind of generic email thing that I had put Fishers
Okay.
out there for. I've got a short list of names, and I'll just either add to it or subtract as you
Okay.
wish. All right. But it's Thursday the 18th, and from 10 o'clock on to whenever. And I'll have the food and some beverages available.
Yeah, I've got just a couple of logistical questions. Logistics being a broad word. When you sign on to the Zoom session, are you asked for that passcode or not?
I was not tonight.
Anybody else?
I wasn't either, Bill.
I think it's built into your
Yeah, must be.
link that you send out.
If you
Yeah,
if you click on the connection that you send us in an email,
Yeah,
I
no.
wasn't
no
asked for
pass-
the passcode.
I had
It
an
could-
interesting thing, Bill. I tried, I didn't have it. I sent you an email asking for it. I don't know. Anyways, in the meantime, I tried to get on. I did have the old thing. I put the password in and it didn't work. And somehow I tried it again and then all of a sudden I was on. So I don't know. So
So Zoom probably figured out which meeting you were trying to get onto. I don't
that
know.
was a miracle, something.
Yeah, there you go. It's a Catholic miracle again.
The interesting thing is, remember a couple of sessions ago, I was trying to do it on my cell phone and it was a mess.
Yeah.
But I recall the first time that I tried to log on through my cell phone, it required a passcode.
Oh,
And subsequently, I always test things out ahead of time to make sure I got everything out to everybody correctly. I haven't been asked for a passcode. So
Mhm.
maybe the whole thing is built into, could be the URL that I'm sending, or it could be they recognize whoever has been using the system before for this kind of Zoom is recognized as being a legitimate user. I don't know.
That might be because I ran a thing down and had my name on it. I was surprised. So you might be right.
Bill, you're a paid member. You have a Zoom account? Bill?
Yes,
Bill,
right.
Yagerlener?
right. It's a paid account. Yeah, maybe that
Hmm.
has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Because I've done Zoom calls where I'm the lead and I don't have an account. I mean, although they recognize me. So if I'm calling from Chicago, I start the call in Chicago, they kick me off after 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
But if I started from Wisconsin, they let me go for an hour and a half.
That liberal state.
No, I think it's the volume of Chicago, the size of Chicago is
Oh,
probably,
yeah, for sure. I expect.
whereas
This
when I'm in rural
also-
Wisconsin, they let me go on a lot longer than 40 minutes.
This also may relate to how Zoom is installed on the device that
That
you're
too.
using.
That could be.
And that once you have an established connection with another site, depending on some settings, it might let you through. I'm just hypothesizing that.
Yeah, me
But-
too. I'm not
but-
sure why, but in Chicago, if I start the call in Chicago, they give me a warning at 10 minutes before the 40 minutes and then 5 minutes before, and then I just shut me right down at 40 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, because, I have a paid subscription, there's no time limit.
Right.
So I always set it up for 3 hours just to be on the safe side in case
Yeah.
things drag on. I think 1 or 2 sessions had some that went on for quite a bit of time. So that's one of the reasons that I decided to just spend the money, and I didn't like the limitations time wise and stuff like that. There were some other things. Oh, I know what it was, the recording of the sessions.
Oh,
As I recall it, if you don't have a paid subscription, you can't record it.
Can't record. I think you're right.
And so that's why I thought it would worthwhile to invest a few bucks in it. So anyway, so the other question that I had was really about the MailChimp that I used to send out the what I have been calling the updates, and I'm assuming that people are getting it. One of the nice things about MailChimp is they tell you who has actually opened the mail, and I mean who has received it and who has opened it. So I can keep track of how useful people are finding that. But I was kind of curious, when you get those the MailChimp mailings, I mean, is there anything when you see it in your email inbox that kind of alerts you it's clear who it is you're getting it from, or
St.
Yeah,
Joe,
it's- Yeah,
You're
it
talking-
just says St. Joe Memories or something.
Yeah, it just says St. Joe Memories. I know right away when it says St. Joe Memories that it's from you.
oh, okay. And the reason I did that St. Joe Memories was there are, I wouldn't say a lot, but several St. Joe Seminary groups out there.
Oh,
And so all the ones that would be simple, like St. Joe Alumni, somebody else had long since taken it.
Well, there's a St. Joe's College in
right,
Indiana, which is
Right.
good. There's one in Philadelphia, so
right. I tried to come up anyway. So St. Joe Memories was
that's good.
After-
That's fine.
poking around with things.
it's fine.
Oh, and the other thing that just to alert you to, I'm kind of one of my next emails is going to do with the changes that I've made in the website. I'm trying to reorganize the way stuff is presented there so that it would be easier for people to locate things. I don't know that I'm going to succeed in that. We have in the last message that I sent out had to do with YouTube. It turns out that, I went back and looked at it. We've got 100 YouTubes out there, messages from stuff that Bill Lazinski did back in the 60s, early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and John Mullally, and some other things that and then we got the Zoom meetings and some other things. So when I started to realize that how many of those things that tell the tale of the seminary, and put them on the on YouTube, I thought, boy, I just got to let people know that that stuff is there, and I'm trying to make it easier for people to find stuff on our website. There are hundreds of early photos that Jim Blanchard and Angie at the archives sent over to me, and I got who was it? Just died a while back. I want to say Danner, Father Danner.
Mike Danner?
Yeah. He got over to Jim Blanchard. I think it was over to, anyway, his collection of a couple of years worth of the recorders. And so back in that was like the mid to late 1950s. And I found those really interesting because it really presents a good snapshot of who was doing what in the seminary at that time period. And I've been able to find several other recorders and things like that that are, again, the snapshot of what life was like, a lot of things that we remember. Unfortunately, I have our final year, May of 1966, that issue of the recorder. But all of the other issues for the previous 5 years, I don't have them, and it doesn't look like anybody that I've been in touch with has them. So those are the ones that I especially would have like to have seen. It's a good refresher in my own minds about what the heck I was doing and what some of our classmates were doing during that time. So anyway,
I have a question, Bill. Can I ask it? Especially those of you who left before finishing your 8th year, didn't graduate. Bill Yagerlener, you left at the end of your 6th year, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And Paul, you left at the end of your 7th, right?
Yes.
And Dick, you left at the end of your 7th, right?
That's correct.
Were you any of the three of you I left at the end of my 8th year. I mean, I got my degree from St. Mary's University in Texas in philosophy, but I never got any kind of exit counseling, any kind of a message, even by mail, especially the issue where apparently we weren't supposed to connect with those who were still in the seminary. I mean, didn't that come out in that one discussion with that author on the book on the seminary life or something?
Right.
The
Yeah.
church
It's in the rule book that is.
rule book. They frowned on ex-seminarians still being friendly or
Yeah,
connected with
it
current
says in the
seminary.
rule book that you're not to have any contact with former seminarians.
But did anybody get any kind of counseling when you left? I didn't. I just sent them a formal letter to Grand Rapids Diocese that I was leaving. And I think I asked them how much I owed.
No, they gave you a bill, but they never really, in my opinion, I think I said this before, they never thanked you for all the time you put in just to.
No, there was no
I found
positive.
very amazing to me. I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
responds to what you're saying, Frank.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a turnoff that I didn't get any kind of feedback at all, except that they sent me a letter saying how much I owed. It wasn't that much. Surprisingly, it wasn't that much.
I never got a
My
bill.
dad paid it, but it was for what I had. I think it was $2,000. But
Yeah, that's what I remember as my bill too. But in that ballpark, $2,000. You didn't get a bill, Yagerlener? You didn't
No.
get a bill when you left?
No, and I think I mentioned this once before. When my dad died in 1962, Monsignor Morin, was it Morin or Moran?
Moran.
Moran.
He called me in one time and said that they had decided that my mother would not have to pay the tuition or that whole. It was a little bit of money, but
$250.
yeah. So I think at that point, I think they realized that at least my family, probably a lot of others, didn't have. It going to be a struggle to pay the
Well, my father was a widower when I entered the seminary. My mother had already died, but I'm pretty sure he got an annual bill or a semi-annual bill.
Sometimes
wasn't-
I wonder if the way the finances were set up, I don't have any, that the parish fronted the money. This
They
is my
paid a big
theory.
chunk of it. Yeah, maybe you're right.
And then when the money you gave them was either supplemented, say the real bill was $500 or something like that. So you paid, if you whatever parish it came from, you paid half of what they put in. I'm just guessing, like if for instance, in the DDF fund or whatever they had, they took money from the parish to fund the seminary, and then you kind of contributed to the rest. Because as far as the payment of that and looking in the finances even way back then, that was quite a deal, because you paid, I mean, for $250 a year, you got your room and board and education.
Right. That was a deal.
And you really, I don't know, we all agree on, but it really limited your travel expenses too. But that was, to get a high school education like that was kind of incredible. And then even in college to some extent too, when you look at it. But that's my theory. Then I think that in the major seminary, if you completed it, you didn't pay anything. If you continued on, if you left, then you did. But then when you became a priest and you went back to the diocese, then you took out a life insurance policy, and that would pay for your education by the policy. That was my understanding. No one ever really explained that to me. But
And Bill, the fact that you left at the end of your 6th year, I think that the 2,000 I owed might have been for the 7th and 8th year.
that's
I'm
true.
not sure about
That's
that, but I
right.
don't think
That's
it was
correct.
for the minor seminary. I think it was for the 2
It
years.
was the major seminary, Frank. It wasn't for
Yeah.
the minor.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dick.
I always find it kind of interesting. I applied. There was a lot of correspondence of mail going back and forth between me at the seminary and Wayne State University, and I just can't imagine that they didn't have any idea what was going through my mind in the final few months of our stay in 1966. I mean, and I had to get a transcript from Mitch. I mean, just the fact that I got a transcript and had, he had to mail it down to the Wayne State, sort of says, well, they couldn't have not known that I was seriously thinking about leaving.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it might have been a
you hadn't
relief.
formally told them yet, Bill? You hadn't formally?
No,
No.
I hadn't. It was with the mail kind of stuff. I was just, I would get catalogs and
Wow.
other mailings from them.
Is that legal to read?
I don't know. Apparently they didn't. They did. They remember how they used to put the larger than mail out there on the floor or something. That old desk for
Anybody
you were
to read?
supposed to pick up your mail there, clearly indicating that somebody was keeping track of what
Did
you were
something with
getting.
it.
Yeah. So in retrospect, I sort of think, well, my decision might have been a relief to them, only in the sense that, and maybe you guys could have shed some light on this. I don't know if maybe in some of your classes, whether there were other people who had medical issues like diabetes. I mean, that required quite a big change in the way things were done at the seminary for me, including the kinds of meals that I was served. And in that time, I had to store the insulin So in a refrigerator somewhere. I can't remember exactly.
Well,
How-
as I remember, I think this is right, because I was an infirmarian, and you probably stored it with Sister Christopher. In response to your issue regarding meals, I think that she would make sure that the nuns knew, you know, with your diet, so that you wouldn't. They'd have something maybe prepared for you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Was special, but I think they worked through the infirmary to do that, as I recall. I may be wrong, but
Yeah, I always kind of felt in that last 6 months there a little awkward because of whatever table I was seated at, I would get whatever
you get
was being
steak all the
served to
time.
pardon?
You got steak all the time.
Well, whatever the faculty was being served is what I got served. So it was really kind of awkward to, for me to be eating a really nice, well-rounded meal, and everybody else at the table got the grease bags and that soup. But yeah, obviously I think Sister
Sound like
Christopher.
Oliver Twist or something.
Yeah. But getting back to my other question, what about other people in the major seminaries? Did you ever encounter people who had issues that had to make special deals about?
That I was aware of, no.
No, I don't remember. I don't remember recalling any
Either.
classmate having a special diet. I just don't remember. A lot of times you don't, when you're only 18, 19, 20 years old, 21, you're not as observant maybe
Right.
about your co-classmates' health.
I don't recall. It's also possible that, at that point, that those were handled discreetly enough that
Yeah, and privately.
that you wouldn't know. Coming back, I don't recall how many years I continued with this, but in elementary school, and that continued part of the time when I was in the seminary, I took an allergy vaccine that was an injection. I don't recall whether it was every 2 weeks. It wasn't any less frequent than that. When I was in elementary school, I'd walk over to the doctor's office at the lunch period and get the injection. And I would bring the vial up the seminary and leave it with Sister Christopher. No, she had it. It was in the refrigerator.
She would say anything. I mean, she knew what to do, and she didn't make a big
Yep.
deal of it in that.
Yep.
So she was quite a person.
Mhm.
Who was the infirmarian in our class of 66? Does anybody remember? Was that Mark Gardeski?
It might have been.
Yeah,
I don't
he-
remember.
Recall.
What was the job of infirmarian, Dick? Did you have to spend
I
some
went
time?
every morning. They were like in the morning and at night generally, and help Sister Christopher.
Oh, dispense things or?
Yeah, they came. Well, I mean, people they come with sore throats, and I actually gave shots. Believe it or not.
yeah.
I was amazed. I gave penicillin shots to people.
Uh-huh.
I would not give. In Paul's case, I don't think Sister would let me give Paul his shot, but I do remember giving penicillin shots. And the funniest, it's kind of gross, but one time, Sister Christopher, I don't know what her problem was, but she had a problem with her hip. And she walked, she would grab the walls. And one time, she was walking and the door closed and chopped off the top of her finger.
Wow.
And so I got in there, and there's somebody looking in the wastebasket for her finger. Now, I didn't know that I kind of came in after the fact. And so, she went to the hospital and she lost her finger. I think it was this finger, because she held the wallet. Well, about a few months later, it was like in the spring, there was a baseball game, and there was Pete Thalen. He was kind of a short guy, and he was playing baseball, and he ran into somebody. I can't remember who it was, and basically he had a concussion or something. And so they brought him in from the field to the seminary, and he was lying on the floor. And I remember it took like 4 guys to keep him down. I mean, he was just going nuts. And somebody had the bright idea of, try to knock him out. And I think, really? You're going to do that while this guy's,
In pain?
you could swallow it. But the funny part was that I was thinking that Sister Christopher lost her finger, was going to give him the thing, and he'd bite another finger off. But it was really scary, because Pete was not big. I mean, he was shorter than I am now. At that time, he was like 2nd or 3rd year at that time. And he was strong as a bull. I mean, they had big people holding him down. And then I don't know if they took him to the hospital or something and took care. He might have had a concussion. I don't know.
That was a seizure.
Well, it might have precipitated it based on the contact. I don't know what, but I'd never seen anybody in my life
That was a
act
seizure.
like that. Or, and I'm not saying that he did anything wrong. He was just,
Knocking him out would not have been the right thing to do.
I don't think so.
You're right. But I mean, I think everybody was so, everybody wanted to help, but they didn't know what to do. But they also were frustrated because Pete was so just flailing. It was hard to explain. And the worst part too was that he was in a narrow hallway. So, I mean, if he threw his hands like that, he hit the wall. And the biggest thing is you didn't want to hurt his head anymore. He had. So, eventually, I guess things work out. I don't know if Pete is alive today or if he ever had any effects of it, but I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And but she was, working with her for 4 years. She was unbelievable in a lot of ways. Vel, God protects the nurses. And then, hey, you, come here, like this, like Father Weissenkopf would do. But she really had a heart of gold in working with her, and she was really committed to doing her job and making sure people were, healthy. It was a nice education for me.
I remember that we used to get, when we came down with illnesses, get those huge sulfa pills.
Yeah, Gantherson pills. They were for sore throats. That's right.
Right.
Take 2 a day or something.
And one time that I got really, I don't know whether it was the influenza itself, but I was really in a fever and really sore throat and the whole bang. I remember being admitted to one of the rooms there in the infirmary. And somebody came along and gave me a penicillin shot. It might have been you. But holy mackerel, I'd never had penicillin before. And my God, I was like recovered within a day. It was just amazing.
Well, she believed in it, that's for sure, because I gave quite a few. And it was kind of weird because I had never given shots in my life, or, that was
right.
Amazing. And that's the only time I've ever had them had to do that kind of thing. So,
And it's funny, when I got a copy of, somebody sent me, I think it was maybe Frank, that your copy of the annual bulletin
Right.
that had, anyway, there was listed in there 2 physicians as being on call or on staff or something. And I was absolutely astounded by that in the 6 years that I and many of us were
never
there.
saw a doctor there ever.
Never saw a doctor. You know, especially even in that last year when I was being treated for diabetes, I never saw a doctor. It was like,
Well, the only time you could see a doctor is if you got on a bus and went to the person's office. You'd get a release or something, and you were able to do it that way, I guess. Or if you had a special dentist appointment or something, I guess. I don't know, but.
Does anybody remember?
Not to contradict you,
Pardon me?
not to contradict you, this may have been a dream. I recall having some kind of a fairly severe throat infection, if that's what it was. And I was admitted to the infirmary. And I don't recall how long I was in there, whether it was 2 days, 3 days, or maybe not at all. But I recall having one of those doctors stop in to see me.
Does anybody remember that Jim Hannock? I actually didn't. Completely forgot this fact. Left the seminary in December of '65. Because he's not on the photo of
right,
the 19 of us that are on that graduation photo
right,
in May of '66. You know that every year they do
right.
Senior Moran in the middle and all the photos around the outer edge. Hannock's not in that.
No, I do not recall that.
And he told me in an email that he left in December. He attended Loyola in Chicago for 1 semester. And then apparently he talked to Monsignor Moran about returning to the seminary, and they must have talked it over in the staff, and they let him. Because he came to the event that those of us in the Grand Rapids Diocese came back to the seminary in some point in June. Albert, you and I, we drove up there together, I think.
Yeah.
When they made the assignments for the 7th year. Apparently most people got their assignments at the end of the school year for the next year after leaving the minor seminary. But because of that, there was that brouhaha that we talked about, a little bit of a strike, although maybe that's a strong word or the incorrect word, where we stood up to Monsignor Moran. They delayed the announcement of the next assignment until June.
Right.
Paul, I think you had a small hand in that, didn't you? You had talked to somebody at the diocese.
Okay. The bishop met with 3 of us at the chancery.
Okay.
And I hesitate now to say who the other 2 people were.
It's okay. I don't need to know. I wasn't one.
And I thought it was a very cordial discussion. And no, basically an information thing that Bishop Babcock was trying to listen to us. I did not receive my assignment to Baltimore in person with anybody.
Okay.
Somehow or other, I was informed, but I don't remember how it was.
Dick Galant. Wake up there, Dick. What was the experience of your class? You would have graduated in 65. So
65.
how were you notified of where you were going to be going?
Yeah, your next
I
destination.
just remember we were told because Frank and I knew, and then Larry Christensen knew that we were going. As far as the
Frank Unger, Frank
I had
Unger.
a picture up. I've never, why, we never were told or anything.
Right.
But somehow we were told, and we knew when we left where we were going, I guess, and that was about it. It wasn't a big. I don't want to trivialize what you're talking about. Just
No.
prior, it wasn't any big deal. I mean, it just seemed like it was almost like an afterthought because I think they gave up on us personally, but
Nope.
we don't need to go on from there. But
Was there something about the seminary in Cincinnati that, because I had never heard a thing about Cincinnati as being a good place or a bad place or.
Well, it was, I don't know much about it. It was in Norwood, Ohio, I guess right outside of Cincinnati.
Yeah. On the
And
edge.
there's a university that's I've seen that kind of was a spinoff on it. I think it was oh shoot, I can't think of the name of the seminary. And Larry Christensen passed about 2 years ago. But once he left, I've never saw him again. I did learn that he was a lawyer, and somehow I learned that, but I never had any communication with him. So
I remember our group, our class of 66, I remember meeting with Monsignor Moran as a group and telling him that we weren't going to go to Cincinnati. Does that ring a bell with?
Yes. Yes. That's the way I
See,
remember.
if I was there, I've forgotten about it. I just didn't realize that Cincinnati was
That's what I remember.
I had no idea what
not
it
a
was.
desired next location.
If I was involved in that, I suppressed it.
Okay, yeah, I don't recall Cincinnati. I mean, in our discussions since then, in the last 2 years, it's come up that Cincinnati was supposedly what place we didn't want to go to.
That's
And
what
I think they found some new places. Didn't somebody go to Milwaukee? 2 of our classmates went to Milwaukee.
Yes. And you went. And you went.
And Hannick and I went to San Antonio, and nobody from our diocese had been to San Antonio ever. We were 2 students ahead of us were from Saginaw, but I think we were the first Grand Rapids students to go to St. Mary.
Actually, there were several priests from Grand Rapids Diocese who went to San Antonio.
Okay, well then it must have
right.
been years before me, right? And I
Yeah,
didn't know
really, it was. And I always thought when I heard that, I was a little surprised. But it was kind of nice to know that, in fact, I forget who the priests were. I think they are still alive or just recently passed away. That they were sent to San Antonio in recognition of the fact that there were so many Spanish-speaking
Yeah, in fact, that was
on the west side of the state, and they needed people who could, speak the language. And
when Monsignor Moran asked for volunteers for San Antonio, the one comment he made was that he was hoping the 2 who accepted would learn Spanish better to help serve the migrant population, the ex-migrant population in Western Michigan.
I never understood really, in retrospect, how Father Leo became. I don't think that he went to San Antonio, but he was very fluent in
He was
Spanish.
very fluent in Spanish, yeah.
But I don't have any inkling as to how he became so fluent.
And the summer I left, in June of '66, he was now the pastor of the church that Albert and I went to in Douglas, Michigan, Saugatuck, Michigan.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
And it had a very, very big Spanish-speaking population.
Yeah.
And he didn't hire me. I basically was given a small stipend and a car to visit all the camps in Allegan County where there were migrants living, and distribute literature and maybe even clothes, and let them know that the church, there was a mass for them. I think it's in Spanish. I'm not sure. It might have been an evening mass. I don't think it was a Sunday mass. Yeah, he
It's
was
kind
the
of
pastor.
interesting. Does anybody know what the status of the fruit picking people are on the west side of the state these days? I mean,
It's,
in our time, it was like a lot of migrant people who were moving from state to state, and a lot of those were Spanish speaking. But
if you let me speak on that
Sure.
one, my brother-in-law has a fruit farm in Southwest Michigan, and he can't get any help. All the migrants that used to be there are in factories with factory jobs.
They
Yeah,
dropped
more
out.
money.
They dropped out. And they bought
More
homes
money.
in Fenville,
Yeah.
Michigan. A lot of them bought homes in Fenville.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
gonna
And other
say they
cities,
stayed
too.
there and that.
And most of them have factory jobs, right?
Yeah, right.
What kind of fruit does he grow?
He grows cherries mostly and plums, but he ends up having to pick it with a mechanical picker. And so he's a pretty much of a one-man job with a,
Where is it at?
it's in Fenville, just about 3
Oh,
miles.
Fenville? Okay, I didn't,
Yeah.
okay.
And he's doing very well, right?
Pardon?
Fairly
Yeah.
successful fruit farmer.
Well, he's 67 now and he's going to retire. So he's talking
yeah,
about
okay.
pushing out the trees, but
Give,
it's a great 200 ton of cherries a year, but he's going to get out of the business. Can't get any help.
I just saw a video of that device. I don't know why I've never seen one before, but it's
Oh yeah.
it wraps around the trunk of the tree, and it has
Yeah.
like an upside down umbrella that
Right.
folds around the base. It shakes the tree, and the leaves, well, the berries fall and a few leaves, and then they filter it out through a thing on the back of the machine. And then so maybe 5 minutes on a tree, and then it pulls away and goes to the next tree.
That's correct. But they have to grow the tree, especially with a long, taller trunk, and so you
Right.
can get the machine underneath it.
And there's no grass growing underneath. It's usually just I don't know how they eliminate the grass, but
Who supplies do you supply American Spoon or something like that? Who does he sell his fruit to? American
can-
Spoon? Huh?
Cannery there in Fenville.
Oh,
mostly.
okay. Because you got in Holland, there used to be a Heinz place there, right?
there used to be some cake
Pickle
or
place,
pie
yeah.
factories and other fruit
It's
factories.
American Spoon is right around Saugatuck and Douglas, I think. They have even a bed and breakfast there.
They might have been bought out by somebody else, because some of
Yeah.
these,
There's no-
the Michigan fruit canneries, there are two in Southwest Michigan, and they're now owned by, what's the name of the corporation?
Argyle?
No, the
Beach-
big one with the green
Beach
tie,
Nut or-
maybe. or-
Beech Nut or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, some of these
Well,
big
Beach Nut,
corporations.
because up in Newaygo, that's where Gerber Baby Food
Yeah,
is.
Gerber had a big presence in Western
Everybody
Michigan.
keeps getting bought out. I don't know what their names
Yeah.
are.
That was even true when I was in Iowa. I found out that the farmers are kind of rich, but they also, owned by corporations and stuff.
Mhm.
And maybe have the same problem with their labor issues. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in Muskegon, and I wasn't really aware of the fruit industry around there until I went to the seminary. It's like we were vaguely aware of the migrants coming into, and I say migrants because we didn't actually physically see the people who were coming to pick fruit. And
Mhm.
Muskegon itself, I don't think had a big fruit presence. To the south of Muskegon, there was a little town called Fruitport.
Yeah,
Right?
we-
I remember that.
There was
Blueberries, maybe?
yeah, blueberries. I remember the blueberry, and we sort of knew, well, Traverse City was cherries, but apparently there was a lot of fruit production all along the west coast of Michigan that I just grew up without really appreciating that.
Had to be involved in,
You had to be
Well,
involved.
one of
in it,
the
right?
things, I hope climate change doesn't affect it, but Michigan, especially growing apples and all along that coast there,
Yeah.
is the difference in the temperature is like a few degrees on the Michigan side versus the Wisconsin side.
Yeah.
And because of that, they were able to grow the fruit. And as far as blueberries, that's like one of the top blueberry places in the United States.
Yeah, Western Michigan,
the
it is.
$5 billion industry.
South
The
Haven.
other thing that helps the fruit growers is the fact that we're on that Michigan is on the east side of Lake Michigan,
Right,
and
exactly.
the extra amount of snow that falls. I mean, Fenville got almost every year got over 100 inches of snow.
Well,
And sometimes
Michigan-
you'd go 10 miles farther into the state and they would get half that amount of snow. It's
It
lake
used to
effects,
be-
though.
oh, I'm sorry, but it used to be that Muskegon was had the most cloudy days in the United States, the number of cloudy days.
It could be, it
Still
probably
be.
still does.
You know, another thing that's interesting about that area is that, if, I don't know if you recall, but Disney, you know, they used to have those bird shows that they would show, those nature shows in Allegan County. That was a huge migration point for birds. And they would do their, you know, their nature on birds in that area because there were so many of different varieties
Yeah.
and that they could catch along there as they were going from Canada down to Florida. So
And they
it's
would follow the shore of the Lake Michigan because it was,
right,
you know, it was 50
exactly. It
miles
would,
wide.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
always
it's
Still
amazed.
happens.
Say
Yes,
That
again,
sir.
still happens. There's
Yeah.
still,
Sand Hill
No.
Crane.
are you in Allegan County, Paul?
no, we're in Kalamazoo County.
You are? Okay.
Kalamazoo has a nature center. It's about 8 miles into the county from the north, pretty much centrally located in the county. And they do a major bird banding program to some extent all year round, but during the migratory season, that they're very involved in the banding process.
You know, Bill, you're in Battle Creek, right?
Right.
You know that Chelsea in that area, they make Jiffy Mix.
Mhm.
But one of the things that's I guess unique about that is that they're able, I don't know, because of the weather or whatever, to grow two crops of wheat in a year. And they fed into Kellogg's, you know, to grow some of their wheats and stuff in that area just east of Battle Creek along there. I know that Kellogg has done a major shift in its whole corporate structure and everything because they moved a lot of it to Chicago. And anyway, this just happened recently, but I don't think we realize how lucky we are in Michigan with the fruit and all the the food that we were able to have so close.
There
Listen,
are
guys,
two
I'm going to have to call it
varieties.
quits tonight. I'm going to have to leave.
Okay.
I haven't
Sounds
finished
good.
my dinner yet, and it's 8:00 here.
Oh, no, it's 9:10 here.
Yep.
So anyway, I'll
I'll
definitely
bet they see
get
all.
back to you, Albert, on that
All right.
Yeah.
event in August. Okay.
Paul, I
Yeah.
want to hear
Take
good
care,
news.
Frank.
Paul,
Okay,
good news
guys.
next time.
And
Will
Bill,
you please?
you'll send an email when our
Praying for
next.
Yep.
Remember Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bill.
When our next conference call is or Zoom call.
Well, it'll be first Monday in October.
Oh, it's okay. Every other month. That's right. August.
And
Okay,
then we
first
hit,
in
three.
October.
Third.
then
Okay.
after
Goodbye,
that,
guys.
I gotta take off
October
too.
Take
Good
care.
night, all.
Okay,
Night.
good night to
Good
everybody.
night.
Good night.